This episode of Linux Action Show is brought to you by GoDaddy.com.
And by Ting.com. Head over to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Linux Action Show, Season 29, Episode 6. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Good morning to you, Matt.
Good morning.
Actually, good afternoon
Good
to
afternoon,
you.
yeah.
We'll get into that later.
We'll get into later.
Should I tell folks about the big show?
Oh, let's hear it.
All right, Matt, coming up on this week's episode of the Linux Action Show, we're going to talk with Jos Poortvliet?
Poortvliet. I believe
Poortvliet?
so, yes.
We'll ask him when he comes on the show. Now, Jos is the openSUSE community manager since 2010. He's also a free software evangelist for over 10 years, and he's an active volunteer in the KDE community. And he's about to head off to some SUSE conventions, and openSUSE 13.1 is just 8 days away. Yes. So we thought it'd be a great time to get Jos on the line and ask him some tough questions about openSUSE. Also, in the news segment, there's been a ton of stuff that's come out around Steam, and we're going to do a roundup of all of that. I got some really interesting details and some rumors. And then in the feedback segment, somebody wrote in asking about our distro review testing methodologies. So we'll cover how we do that.
I think that's actually going to be an interesting segment.
Pretty relevant since we're about to do an openSUSE 13.1 review. But first, Matt, it is our picks this week. And as is per tradition, for over 7 years, coming on 8 years of the Linux Action Show, we start with a Runs Linux. And this week's was sent in by Cuddlefish. And he says, I'm sure you folks had seen this. Actually, Cuddlefish, you were only the second person to send this in. This 12-year-old boy builds robots and runs Linux. So here he is. We'll play a little clip of this. This is from an ABC interview he did. The whole thing's actually pretty fascinating. It's about, I don't know, it's about, what did they tell you? It's about 15 minutes long. We'll just play a few seconds of it.
It moves, it interacts, it goes around, feels like it's more real. When I was 4, my mom showed me Google for the first time. I'm like, cool, I can search for anything, right? Out of curiosity, I said, how can I make something like that?
You ask him, like, well, how did you write your first Android app? How did you learn how to do that? Well, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos online that were instructional classes on how to write an Android app. The litany of things he knows is pretty mind-boggling. He knows Linux. He's written, I think he's written an iPhone app. He knows ROS, the robotic operating system from Willow Garage. He knows that very well. He's interested in ham radio.
This is Kilo Juliet 6.
So one of the things that's interesting when you watch this video, except for the exception is just this shot right here, they're running Ubuntu on these things. And we've been commenting about how recently we've been seeing more and more just like organic uses of Linux in these deployments. Here you go. So I think it's just interesting. On Linux Unplugged, you and I have been talking a lot about the younger generation and sort of how smart devices sort of seal them off from learning the inner workings of computers. And then you see something like this.
Yeah, this young man clearly proved us wrong on that one. I mean, he really nailed it.
And I'm very glad to be proven wrong on that. And this looks really compelling. So we'll link to the full video. This is it's called the 12. This is from a robotics CEO. Whole interesting thing here is they wanted something to do with him that was, they knew he had some innate talents, but they weren't quite sure where it was. And so in a partnership with this company and Google sent over a whole bunch of robot parts and was like, here's some parts, you know, do something with it. And so this kid shows up with his Ubuntu laptop and has a couple of boxes worth of robot parts. And within the first couple of days, he's got a basic robot built. Within a week, he's got fully autonomous robots running around the place.
I can't put together like basic things. I mean, like I have a hard time making food,
dude.
I can't even. Robotics is so far beyond me.
IKEA is beyond my skill set.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. You ever seen Homer Simpson in the barbecue? That's me. You know. I mean, I'm just saying.
It seems like this show recently has been documenting how Linux will be at the center of the robot revolution. And
wow, clearly, I mean,
it's pretty cool stuff, and it's so great just to see. It's just, for me, it's more telling that Linux is just organically part of the setup, right? It's just part of it. It's not like a big deal made about it. It wasn't a huge deal. It's like, oh, he has a Linux laptop. Oh, and you can interface with a robot using a Linux terminal.
And I love the fact that it feels more commonplace and it's no longer the center of the story, which is actually a good thing because it's becoming expected. I think that's super.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. You said it much better than I could have. So that's why I really like it. All right. So I'm going to help you add 256 terabytes or something about that to your Linux box. With my app pick this week. Yeah. Somewhere around there. We'll do an exact check once we get to the pick. So stay tuned for that because you're not going to want to miss that pick. But first, I want to thank our first sponsor this week, and that is the good folks over at GoDaddy. Woohoo! Now, GoDaddy has been, I just mentioned, the show's been going for almost 8 years. GoDaddy has been a supporter of the Linux Action Show almost that entire time.
Yes.
They're rolling out something really new, and I was surprised to see how fast the Linux Action Show community has taken advantage of the new GoDaddy website builder. Now, their website builder makes it easy to create your own website, put your business online, and find new customers. They do SEO optimization. They do mobile spin-off versions for you. You can choose from hundreds of customizable designs, and you're on your way. Website builder even includes a free domain, hosting, and 24/7 support. It's go time, so go over to GoDaddy.com and enter the promo code WSB6, Website Builder 6, to get a website builder for only $1 per month for 12 months. There are some limitations. You're going to want to see their site. So I thought that's an interesting idea, especially for like family members or friends.
Well, and even small businesses that just want to get something. It's like, look, we're not looking to geek out on this. We simply want it to be up, running, and effective.
And something you can give them that they can then maintain themselves. Right?
Exactly.
They have the tools. And then they don't have to worry about the SEO crap. They don't have to worry about making it work on mobile because GoDaddy has teams that just keep that current, keep that updated. What I was surprised to find is our own community, folks in our IRC chat room where we do the show live, people in there went over during our last spot and created websites for themselves. They registered the domain. Awesome. They created their own website. They're putting their resumes up there. They're putting their about pages up there, right? So then when they're contacting people, like, here, just go to my website. And the thing is when you're looking for a job, when you're looking for clients, or if you just want to control what people find when they Google you, you're going to want to have your own website.
That's right.
If you're like me, though, you've got other things to do in the day, this combination of the GoDaddy hosting integrated with the website builder for $1 a month, including the support you need,
obvious to me.
This is so how you spin one of these things up, either for your own business, for yourself, for a group, for an open source project, whatever it might be. Go over to GoDaddy.com and use the code WSB6 to get the website builder, the hosting, and 24/7 support for $1 a month for a year.
That is crazy. And you know, another thing that occurs to me is you're a college student. You're getting ready to graduate. As you pointed out, you're looking for work. What a great thing to have, like a website.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. You know.
And thanks to GoDaddy, you know, WSB6, you guys, go take advantage of the just create yourself a site and put something up there. It's totally worth it. And then you own what you get when people search for your name. And I think that's incredibly important. Don't let Facebook, don't let G+ own that. I want you to own that. Yeah. And then once you have your own domain, you can do things with email. Oh, those website builder, it also includes email.
That's right.
That's crazy, right? So
I've been using GoDaddy ever since I switched from my previous hosting company. I've been very, very happy with it.
I've been using GoDaddy for years and years and years, 7+ years.
Wow.
So thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring Linux Action Show.
Big stuff.
Yay. All right. I know you're a Jungle Disk fan.
I was.
Yeah,
I have a love-hate thing with them.
No, you've moved on.
I've moved on.
I have too, yeah. But what did you like about Jungle Disk?
At the time, I loved the fact that it just worked. If I want to make a scheduled backup of, say, maybe my home directory or something, you know, maybe a little less large, and I want to do it effectively, easily, get it done, runs cross-platform. That was a big thing for me. I had none of this Mosey stuff or any of that stuff. I want it to be cross-platform, Linux, OS 10, and Windows. That's why I liked it.
You know, one of the things that I also like about it is, honestly, S3 too. Just like this bucket that I can just fill up.
That's true. But I mean, when I first started using it, I never really thought much about where the hell it went. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I just, I was like, oh, I got to do this other thing on Amazon. I'll do that.
Initially I was like, S3, proprietary interface to it, kind of expensive. But then as time has gone on, it has become ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And as my machines change a lot, it is nice to just have these buckets in the cloud, quote unquote, that I can just dump stuff in. And on SSDs, space is a premium. I get the biggest SSD I can afford, but it's still not big enough.
Well, and to put it in perspective, talk about external backup drives. I have one sitting at my house right now that I'm being hired to recover data from because they did not use the cloud.
Yeah, there's that too, and especially when you have FiOS connections, it's so nice to get it off site.
That's right.
So I wanted a real easy way to interact with S3 on my laptop, something that I could throw a bash script at, something I could throw a backup program at, or something I could just throw CP at or rsync, right?
Sure.
And so I wanted to actually take Amazon S3, I wanted to take a bucket on S3, and I wanted to graft it onto my file system. I wanted to mount it onto my file system.
Yeah.
And so the app pick this week lets you do just that. It's called S3FS, and it's a Fuse-based, so you need Fuse installed, a Fuse-based file system that connects your computer to Amazon S3.
I like
that. And
I'll
demo it for you right here.
That could be kind of cool. Yeah.
So if you're watching the video version, you get to see, I'll zoom in my, so right now if I do a mount command, well, boy, that's kind of hard to read, but I don't have it mounted, okay? But once you get it installed, It is super easy to mount. It has it comes with its own command here. I'll jump in as root so I can just show it to you.
Yeah, there you go.
And right, so the command is S3FS.
Okay, so
Pretty easy to
that's the
remember.
actual command itself. Okay.
And then you tell the bucket you want.
So do you create the bucket name from here?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, you create it on Amazon S3
okay.
interface. So
Sure.
you name a bucket just like you normally would for Jungle Disk, right? And you say I want it. I called it Bonobo Backup, right?
Right.
So you give S3FS Bonobo Backup is the bucket name, where I want it to mount, and then there is a gluttony of options like local caching, all this kind of. There's so many options.
Wow.
But you could also just do it. No options, right?
Okay.
You can just straight up. But I'm going to say -O UID equals 1000. That's my Chris F account. So I'll say Chris F owns this mount point, right?
Okay, sure.
So now, once I hit enter, you wait a second as it mounts it. Now, when I type in mount here, you'll see that on my last dependent here is S3FS on mount/S3. Type is fuse.S3FS. Now, check this out. If I do a df-h, so that's a available drive space, and H gives it a human readable format. You can see that my
nice.
/mount S3 has 256 terabytes
Holy
free.
crap!
How about that, man?
Wow. That's boy, I
Yeah.
could put that to work. So, and what's cool? So that means that you have a directory locally that you can drag and drop stuff into.
Yep. So here's my S3 directory, and you can see if I do an ls-la, I touched this text file on the 9th. So yesterday at 10:47 a.m., I could touch another file. Hello world hello there.txt.
Sure.
And now I'll go edit hello there.txt, and I'm actually editing on S3 directly.
Oh,
so,
that's really cool.
So now we'll say hi there, okay, and we'll save that out. And now if we do an ls and I cat hello there, it says hi.
There it is.
And you can see there's a little bit of latency because it is communicating.
But it's not bad. And as you pointed out, caching could in fact potentially help with that.
Yes, there's lots of ways you can amp up the performance. But I was just experimenting with doing like a DD, and it's essentially whatever your internet connection can sustain upload-wise, that's the right performance you get.
Theoretically, if you have a really good connection and you're really wanting not to go and invest in another hard drive, you could potentially. I wouldn't do it for certain things, but as far as like just basic storage, sure, why not?
Yeah, I was thinking like this could be a really simple way. Oh man, I need to reformat my machine. Let me throw a few things in S3, and then I have them, and then like if I had a set of stuff that I always load on a computer, I could just mount this directory, copy that stuff onto a new install, and then unmount it and call it good. Or if I wanted to do a backup and I just wanted to use straight up rsync, I could use this. So there's tons of possibilities. And plus,
with rsync, I see that as being a really nice, attractive, especially with a what would you say, 256
terabytes available.
I think you got enough room to work with that. I'm just going to put that out there.
You think, Matt? So
good grief.
So there you go. That is S3FS. It is available for a distro near you. It is also in the Arch user repository. If you're an Arch user, just Packer S3FS and you got it.
I am so playing with that.
I know, it's really it's so cool to be like drag and dropping files and like just seeing it. It's going off to another storage backend, and it worked really well for me.
Like that a lot.
And I've also ran it mounted for days without any problem.
Right.
So it's not
and no extra GUI interfaces that you got to deal with.
No,
I just
nonsense.
Just boom, done.
Yeah, I even suspended for overnight and resumed my laptop, and the connection was still active.
Wow.
Yeah,
I like it.
So I'd like to do a little spotlight here. We're going to talk a lot about openSUSE and SUSE Enterprise Linux later on in the show. So I thought maybe we should give love to a different distribution, one of the, I don't want to call it grandfathers, but one of the originals, one of the OG distros.
An OG. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I like that.
Slackware 14.1 was released this week. And now don't laugh, because this is a stable snapshot in time distro. Some of the features it ships with are some of the apps, XFCE 4.10.1. KDE 4.10.5, obviously not the latest. Slackware also uses a kernel 3.10.17.
That's not bad. It's not like you're doing 3.6 or something. So no.
It's fine. It's actually the reason they they tell you why they chose some of these things, like kernel 3.10.17. Even though it's like, what am I running right now? If I check, I am oops. Of course, if I could type. I'm on 3.11.6.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm on as well.
Yeah, so it's obviously not the most recent, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, and it's not like you're running 2.6 or 3.4 or some weird. Yeah.
And there's two kinds of kernels in Slackware. First, there are the huge kernels, as they call them, which contain support for just about every driver in the Linux kernel. These are primarily intended to be used for installation, but there is no reason you couldn't continue to use them after you've installed. The other type of kernel is what they call their generic kernel, in which nearly every driver is built as a module.
Oh.
To use a generic kernel, you need to build an itrid to load your file system module and possibly your device controller or other drivers needed at boot time. You'll also have to configure Lilo to load the initrid at boot and reinstall Lilo if you go that route.
Wow, that but I mean, if you really want to be hardcore, here you go, right? I mean, that's kind of a
kind of nice to see Slackware sort of definitely stepping up on this one feature here. Slackware 14.1 on the 64-bit version supports booting machines with UEFI firmware, which I thought was pretty nice.
That's important.
Yeah. Also, support for Network Manager was introduced as default in this version of Slackware, and it is available for download right now.
Nice. I'm kind of surprised to see Network Manager as a default for anything in Slackware. That just sounds so newbie.
Hey, man. They're stepping up. It's 2013. They're stepping up.
I could see them going old school.
So congrats to the Slackware team for getting out another release. Glad they're still going.
Very
and
cool.
If you're a Slackware user, sounds like it's time for you to go update.
Go check it out.
All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Ting is mobile that makes sense, and Ting is our mobile service provider of choice.
Yeesh.
I've got my HTC One here, which is still, there's some other devices out there, Matt. In fact, you've got the Note 2.
I do.
Both of us, our phones are on Ting, and there's several reasons, which I'll tell you about why we both chose Ting. And I think there's some reasons why you might choose Ting, too. They got some new devices coming out. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. I have been so happy with Ting, and it starts with no contracts. That's honestly, for me, a huge benefit is no contracts with Ting and no early termination fees. Not that I even have any intention of going anywhere. I don't really have any intention of even leaving
Yeah, I mean,
Ting.
you're happy where you're at. There would be no need to, but it's nice to know that they're not trying to entrap you.
Exactly. I feel better knowing that. But also, there's no bundling along of ride-along services. Exactly. You just pay for what you need. They credit. That's old. There's no add-on charges, voicemails, caller ID, tethering, hotspot, three-way calling, all of that. Let me tell you a little bit about their rates. This is a lot of cell phone companies out there have different gimmicks that they're trying to make things cheap, and some of them are even appealing. But none of them actually have engineered the very core of their business around this philosophy, and that's what makes Ting stand out. Ting, I often talk about voting with your wallet, and Ting is a great example of this. You want somebody who's changing up the wireless telephone industry. So check out Ting's rate page. It's really cool. They break out your messages, your megabytes, and your minutes at the end of the month, and whatever bucket you fall into, that's what you pay for. Average Ting bill is $21 per line. Mail hauler in our IRC chat room. It's got 3 phones on there. Last month he paid $44. Cheese Bacon in our chat room. 2 phones on there. I think he said last month he paid something like $32.
That's crazy cheap. I mean, it really is.
And mine has always been really... I have saved so much money since switching to Ting. And it's not even just about saving money. That's like obviously an important aspect, especially these days.
The frosting on the cake, maybe? You know?
Yeah, I would say so. For me, it's more about having unlocked devices that I truly own. These are not devices where you buy and they're subsidized that the carrier is using to keep you into a plan, and then if you cancel, they're going to charge you a big fee. These are top quality devices that you buy them and own them. And I think that's, as Linux users, I think not owning your cell phone is sort of like not having root access to your Linux box.
I think you nailed it there. I really think you nailed it. I mean, for myself, it really comes down to price is certainly a factor. I pay like 20-something a month. The fact that I own my phone without having to feel like I'm leasing it.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big thing for me as well. I think those are the 2 big pieces. And I get a cool phone, too.
When I'm with the other telephone providers, and I've literally been with all of them that are available in the United States in my area, I always feel like it's their game plan. I'm subservient to them.
What are they going to let you do? You know?
Yeah. With Ting, I feel like they're all about getting out of my way, providing me the spectrum, and letting me take advantage of this new computing platform. And Ting also knows that a lot of their customers are early adopters, and they're people that like to be informed on what's going on. So Ting is one of the most transparent wireless companies I've ever seen. In fact, up right now, they have 2 posts on their blog about the Nexus 5 and sort of their testing methodology approach, and how you can even get involved if you're cray-cray enough to buy a Nexus 5 right now from the Play Store and want to test it on the Ting network. And these guys are working so hard on this kind of stuff. And as a small team here at Jupiter Broadcasting, I can appreciate when I see a team of really passionate, dedicated people where you can watch Ting from the far and you can see that all of the employees genuinely care about Ting. They really want to see it succeed because they really believe in it. And that even extends down to the Ting support. In fact, if you call Ting at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., A real person answers the phone, a person who is enabled to solve your problem, a person who is also an enthusiast. Ting hires Android and cellular enthusiasts, people who would be helping out people in their social groups. They hire those people to do the tech support. So when you call them, that person knows what the settings are in Android. That person knows how to reset a profile. They know all of those things, and they can help you do it. They'll even give you their phone number and their direct line, so you can get right back in touch.
You know what I love about it when you call these guys? They're not reading from a script. That
Right.
I really love that
right?
because when you call most call centers, they're not enabled. They're not
Hello,
empowered.
sir. Have you tried turning it on and off again, sir?
Yeah, it's like you're calling for an Android problem and they're asking you to look for your start menu type thing. I mean,
Have
it's
you
like,
synced it with iTunes recently?
it's Android. I mean, yeah, it's bad. So, I mean, the fact that they don't do that and that they are empowered and educated to help you is fantastic.
It's so awesome. And look, if you go over to last.ting.com,
Yes.
that's right, friends, I said last.ting.com, you can take $25 off your first Ting device. If you're going to bring your own device, they have a whole list of Sprint-compatible devices, then they'll give you $25 off your first month of service. Well, if you're like the majority, that's going to give you a first month for free.
That's right.
Just talk about awesome. Then you get the hotspot, you get the tethering, and you only pay for what you use. That is so huge. You combine all of that together, the cherry on top is their early termination relief program. If you've got an existing cell contract, Ting will help you get out of that. Go over to ting.com/ETF. It's so straightforward. You pick your Ting device, you port your number, and then you submit your ETF claim, and they're going to give you up to $75 per line that you had to get canceled.
I mean, how cool is that? It's essentially like you're drowning in a sea of nonsense, with all the other carriers.
Yeah.
And they're throwing you a lifeline to pull you into something sane, which is their ship.
Everyone watching this show is smart enough to know that the existing systems are totally about exploitation,
Oh, yeah.
taking advantage, and locking us down as
Absolutely.
much as possible.
Sure.
And Ting is trying to change all of that. And you know what? People love Ting, and we love Ting too. So thanks to
right.
Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show.
Good stuff.
All right, Matt, I want to start with a little Steam recap because some big stuff happened this week. First of all, happy birthday. Steam has been on Linux for a year.
Woo! All right.
And it has been a crazy, crazy, crazy year. Last week, Valve and invited a bunch of different journalists down to Bellevue, Washington. Valve, I don't know if you knew this. The Linux Action Show, almost 8 years, one of the largest Linux publications in just about any measurement possible, lives in your backyard.
Yeah,
So if
literally. I mean, we could drive to you real
So
easy.
if you ever wanted to have two Linux enthusiasts who are tuned into the Linux community and could give you insights or could just look at what you're doing and talk about it, I know two guys right here.
Absolutely.
I know two guys.
You want to kind of do some behind the scenes stuff. I'm just saying, we're your people.
You don't got to pay for our travel.
Nope.
You don't got to wine and dine us. We
Nothing.
can just jump in the car. We'll even get Jack in the Box on the way down.
We
We're
will
good.
jack in the box for your benefit.
That's right. That's right. So, The Verge, among many others, actually got their hands on the new Steam box, the Linux box, powered with the Steam client on top of it. And there's a bunch of stuff that came out of this, and I just kind of want to go through all of it. So first of all, the Steam Machine is a computer that can fit standard parts, a full-size video card, a motherboard, and all of this in a small case.
Nice.
So, and the way The Verge described this as, you can, 2 years down the road, you just pull the video card, you put a new video card in.
And that's really brilliant on their part. It really is.
Valve designed the case so that each part breathes individually. The CPU blows out the top, the power supply blows out the side, and the graphics card exhausts out the back. So,
So you got great ventilation no matter how you
great
look at it.
ventilation, separate cooling zones. They said they're going to have a system built into Steam that shows you which games your hardware configuration can actually run, and conversely, what hardware you need to buy to play a game as well. So if you got a video card like the Intel Iris that's pretty good, but maybe not fully up to snuff for something like Metro,
Sure.
2013 or whatever, then they'll recommend, or Metro First Light, they'll recommend that, okay, well, if you got this card, this is the next card you should go up to.
Oh, wow.
Here's what's awesome about that. Valve is basing that on the real-world data that they're collecting from all of the other Steam clients to see how those games are performing on their hardware. They're taking all of that data and aggregating it and then saying, okay, well, based on what all of the Steam client data has reported, this video card is the sweet spot for performance. You should put this component in your Steam console.
I love that. So, I mean, you can't
Super
get
smart,
any
right?
more of a sweet spot than that because you know for sure you're going to have the best experience possible following that advice.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was a pretty nice touch, and it shows you that they're using all of their data very well. In January is the date you want to circle on your calendar. That's when the the next shoe is going to drop for Steam machines. Valve's hardware and software partners will reveal their actual Steam machines at CES this year. So it's going to be a big CES for Linux, I think.
Oh, yeah.
There will be a number of different Steam machine boxes that go on sale in 2014. Valve expects them to arrive mid-year. Some of those boxes will be much smaller than the Steam box that they were demonstrating, which was slightly bigger than the Xbox One. There'll also Valve's going to have 300 different iterations of this prototype they're going to send out to testers. This was a big piece of news. We've speculated about this. Valve's cleared up that they will not be making Half-Life 3 exclusive to SteamOS, which some people thought they might in order to drive adoption
So it will not be an
SteamOS.
exclusive. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
They said it is against our philosophy to put a game in a jail and say it only works on Steam machines. This was according to Doug Lombardi from Valve. Even though the company locked Half-Life 2 to Steam years ago, they now appear to have rethought that decision and realized it wasn't necessarily the best thing for Half-Life 2 at the time.
Good for them on realizing that. Yeah.
As we're talking about all of this, something to remember is Steam, the distribution store, has been in iteration for 10 years.
Yeah.
And when it first launched, people laughed at Valve. They thought it was adorable that a games company thought that they had the balls to get into game distribution. People laughed at Valve for trying to make an online store when we didn't have fast connections to download content. People laughed at them.
And back then, that was an issue. I mean, that's a hurdle. Back at that time.
And now Steam is the undisputed champion for software distribution for games. So let's go on from there. They also said that they started talking to partners about integrating Linux and working on Linux 3 years ago.
Whoa.
And they think that a lot of games will be more surprisingly easy to convert. If you're using the Unity engine, you're already done. If you've already got a Mac port, you're almost halfway there, she says. Also, SteamOS won't be about the games. The company plans to add other services such as video, music playback, but things like spreadsheets and Office won't be supported. Another big
Makes sense, though.
Another big ambiguous headline that came out of this big info drop that we got, and we don't know a lot about this. I'll read it directly. This is all the info we have. SteamOS will not be based on Ubuntu, entirely custom. Now, this is from an article at Engadget. They're not quoting anyone. This is just Engadget relaying the information. They say, as promised, the OS is built on Linux, however, not based on Ubuntu, entirely custom, though you would never know it, as the only active layer you see is all Steam.
Interesting. So I wonder how they handle like a package, like how packages are handled. All the back end stuff I want to know about,
Yeah, I think this is crap. And
so you think it's a branding play?
I totally think it's a branding play.
Okay.
And I think it's been interesting to see the extremely jubilant reaction the internet has had to this news. Yeah, thank God has been some of the reactions I've seen. I would be willing to bet this is a strip, and this is just totally me spitballing here.
Sure.
I think it's a 1204 strip down that they've removed maybe a ton of stuff from, right? It's like they've taken 1204 down to the very bare essentials.
Yeah. No, that actually would make sense because now they said it's not Ubuntu. Did they say it's not based on Ubuntu?
See, the problem is
what's the word based use? Because they can split hairs.
It wasn't Engadget quoting anyone. It was just Engadget stating. Right, and so who knows what Engadget's technical proficiency is in this area and all of this, and
it could be based on maybe.
Well, here's the thing: do you spend a year focusing on Ubuntu 1204, working with developers for 3 years, saying let's focus on this stuff lives in this location on the file system. You have these libraries available to you.
Right.
This is how you install software. Do you really spend all this time focusing on that and then not base your OS on that? That seems like too much change.
I think it is based on it. It has to be. There's no other way around it because at the end of the day, okay, granted, they probably are forking from Ubuntu, sure, but I think that is definitely based on it. I think the underpinnings.
And when they want to take advantage of how so many people target Ubuntu for like driver releases, and couldn't you just say, well, instead of when X starts up, instead of starting Unity and Light DM for the login manager, let's just start big picture mode. Right. And you could totally call it a customized thing, just like Mint can call itself its own distribution.
These days you can, because it has separated itself so far. Yeah, I think that's probably what Engadget really meant.
Now, who knows? I mean, the internet seems to have taken this as it's. I would love to see this is if the Linux Action Show was down at Valve and we were having this conversation, that would have been something I would have said, well, wait a minute. Can you clarify that? Because Engadget just took it and posted it.
Yeah.
And the entire internet has just run with it. And it's.
I think it's naive. At the furthest away from Ubuntu it could possibly be is based on Debian, and that is the absolute farthest direction.
Well, what about Linux from scratch or Gentoo?
I don't think they would. I mean, I've seen other like Zombu back in the day when they had the little Zombu boxes that they were pitching to people. I still have one at the house. They were building them. I think it was based on Gentoo at the time, And I've seen what a nightmare headache that is to maintain, and that's partly where they ran into problems. I don't think Steam would do that.
Let me bounce this off you. Steam's got their own package distribution system through Steam. They've got their own software. They could even conceivably send entire operating system updates through Steam. So maybe they don't need apps. Maybe they don't need.
That's actually a really good point. You know, and maybe they're running with their own customized kernel. They're running. You know, they may have gone.
Maybe
it depends on how big their Linux team
is. But then, how do you
know?
explain that repo we saw up on the Steam community FTP servers that was essentially the clone of the 1204 repo with branding changed? Like that, to me, that seems like
it could have been for testing. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. It could have been for testing. They may have tried it and said, you know, this is great, but we're still putting our eggs in someone else's basket as far as development's concerned. Do we want to bring that in-house? Ubuntu allowed us to get our feet wet. Maybe we want to go our own direction. It opens up some really interesting questions. So Valve, please reach out to us.
Yeah, something else we already know, and the reviews also said this. The prototype version of the Steam controller seemed very usable. I have a video linked if you haven't seen that yet in the show notes. So speaking to IGN, Valve Greg Coomer explained that not one Steam machine will be considered the main device. So even if Valve makes one, they don't even consider it to be the main device. Instead, a variety of different boxes will be available, each with their own set of unique features. Now, what's kind of curious about this is one of the things people are talking about is how good Intel Iris is. You know, some of the new System 76 laptops have the Intel Iris chip in them, but it's like it gets you so far, but then there's still just that little bit of a gap that doesn't quite compete with the discrete NVIDIA chips. Well, one of the guys that maintains Intel code for the GPU for the Linux kernel on the mailing list said 2014 is going to have so much architectural changes for our driver that it'll put us in parity with the existing. He said in his mailing post, he said, the changes we're about to make on Intel embedded graphics will be the biggest leap we have ever done, and we believe it'll put us on parity with NVIDIA and AMD.
Whoa! Oh man!
Yeah, and we're talking embedded on the CPU, low power, low heat.
To where at that point, from that point on, if that in fact is holding true to what they're saying, what that means is in the future, the only advantage to going with these other video card manufacturers would be the fact you can swap things in and out. That would be the only. That would be the only advantage.
You know, like the chat room says, though, that's a crazy ballsy driver. But yeah, these are with open source drivers built into the kernels. What they're saying,
and that's contingent on it actually being accurate. I mean, it really has to back it up.
Well, and not like NVIDIA and AMD are standing still either.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, you know, who knows? But if they can keep pace.
Even if they released an embedded chip that was at today's graphics quality levels, like the chip that I have in my Bonobo, if they released an Intel chip that was capable of that, I would be a very happy camper.
Because I think what they could do is Intel could position themselves in a place to where they can produce good graphics, and then NVIDIA and ATI may potentially go with high performance. High performance, hyper performance.
Sure. Also in the show notes, we'll have linked the Steam community group for the Steam universe. There's several groups out there you can join. One of them is they're going to be taking testers for the in-home streaming. They're about ready to start testing that. They're asking for people to join the Steam group. They want to test streaming from a Windows computer to a Linux computer, and then they will probably, I don't know if they're going to just select people from that group or what they're going to do.
You know, here's a thought. If you're looking for people that are already in video, that'd be us. You know, hook us up. I'm just saying we have some experience with that whole video thing. Not that the websites aren't great, but you know, just saying.
So one other thing that happened on Steam this week, and I think this is just the beginning. We got another AAA title for Linux, and this one's a really big one, and it looks really good. And I just recently covered about 3 weeks ago a game that I felt sort of raised the bar on graphics available for Linux.
Big time.
So there's a new one out. It's called Metro. It's new in terms for Linux, not necessarily new for the market. It's called Metro Last Light, made by 4A Games, and it's about 30 bones, and it's extremely violent. So this is an adult video game. You're not playing this one with the kids around, because literally the opening scene is you take a knife to a guy's face.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty. You know, that's pretty upfront in your
prepare yourselves for that. But I thought I'd show it to you a little bit because you know, I'm so thrilled when we have games that are really of this caliber.
And you can show off to people. You don't feel like you're settling. It's like, oh, hey, this is really cool.
So this is Metro Last Light. I'm pretty early into it, but here's here's a shot of it. And I'm on a subway.
In the past, trains were ordinary things. But now, this monorail seems magic, doesn't it? Our kids won't know how to operate these things. And their kids will probably think this was built by the gods.
Wow. So this takes place in a post-apocalyptic nuclear attack. You're in Russia, and you live in the subsystem, the metro system below the city. Whoa. Everything's going on in there so far, at least, and it's about as ugly and violent as it gets. And there's a dark force that is invading this underground civilization, basically, that lives in the metro tunnels. And the visuals, the graphics are so stunning, and the story and the gameplay are very rich.
Just looking at the detail on your monitor is just unbelievable. It's really, really, really good.
Yeah, see, look at the spider webs right there,
and like the depth.
There'll be spiders crawling on those. Spider
the
webs
shadow
from time to
movement, just the spider web moves. I mean, it was really believable.
So here I am running around in this underground subway station, basically looking for bad guys, and it's very creepy. It's It's got a great grittiness to it. It's very dark, but it's a lot of fun to play too. There's a lot of exposition up front, so you got to be prepared for that. But yeah. So, anyways, it's called Metro Last Light, and there's a mouse. Let's shoot the mouse. Get that rat! Get that rat! Come here, rat! See, and I killed that rat like a bad guy. So there you go.
Oh my God, that's the detail is just unbelievable. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, Metro Last Light is it's the one big downside I give to it is look at on the bonobes here. You know, you get a lot of video performance.
Yeah.
Video options. It's all you get. And
my God.
We'll just crank it up all the way. And let's see what
right.
happens. Okay. So let's say, okay. Now we've cranked it up.
Okay.
And we go back. Yeah, it still plays just fine. I don't really know. So it doesn't
That's bonobes. That's right.
Yeah.
This is why you buy one built for Linux.
I guess now we have smoke effects we didn't have before. That's cool.
Whoa.
That's neat.
Oh, wow.
I would say pretty weak video settings.
You think? Yeah. Well, you want more granular controls to
Yeah,
what's going to be, distance and various drawing
Look at
options.
like I'm shooting
tiles and stuff.
Look at that.
That's pretty cool, and it's believable when they're being shot. I mean, it's not like they're just dissipating; they're actually shattering in a very realistic fashion. I'm not a patient woman unless you want to kick in the behind.
You know, if you don't like a violent game, this one's not for you.
No.
But if you want an immersive violent game and you like the post-apocalyptic kind of scenario, that's a good one for you. So it's called Metro Last Light. It was released for Linux this past weekend, and it's about 30 bones, depending on.
I'm going to say it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah. If you want a good game, there you go. All right. So let's shift gears. We're done talking about gaming, and let's talk about a little hoopla. Two stories that generate some hoopla this week. One of them has been bugging me for a long time. I'm surprised it took this long for the GIMP project to have some complaints. But GIMP is fleeing SourceForge, according to the headline over at the Register, due to the dodgy ads.
Don't blame them.
And that damn installer. So if you're on Linux, you're not really affected, but Linux users unaffected.
Right.
But if you're on the Windows or the Mac, this might have plagued you. So the GIMP has decided that it can no longer permit itself to be downloaded from SourceForge, arguing that SourceForge provides a user experience that the project can no longer support. They're quoted as saying, "In the past few months, we've received some complaints about the site where the GIMP installers for the Microsoft Windows platform are hosted." You think about it, people downloading from SourceForge, they're probably all Windows users because Linux users have it for the majority in their distro
This
repo.
is true. Yeah, there would be no reason to get it from there.
They say SourceForge, once a useful and trustworthy place to develop FLOSS applications, has faced a problem with the ads they allow on their site. The green download here buttons that they appear on many ads are misleading and all kinds of, and lead to unwanted utilities and have been spotted there as well. We've all seen this, and here's if you're watching
this is a good example.
These ads, and here's what I don't understand: these are approved by Google.
Yeah,
these
they
are
are
Google ads.
Yeah, they are.
Which is dirty play. And these so when you go to do the download, if you haven't been on Windows, you might not have seen this. You click download, then it takes you to a page where the first thing you see are these huge download buttons, and then right above it says, your download will start here. Use this direct link. But a Windows user who isn't very savvy could easily click that.
Well, and they're not going to see the very faintly in gray font on white, the word advertisement at the very bottom is really difficult to see.
This has got to be a statement of the current state of online advertising on the web.
Yeah, that's what happened when Google takes over. You also got to understand that Google gives a wide berth to image ads, where text ads, they're really, really Nazis about that. But yeah, with images, they
Great
give a
point. And I want to say, on Jupiter Broadcasting, we've experimented with Google text ads. I have never done image ads because of this kind of crap.
You can't.
And Google, you dumb idiots, if you wanted to make more money, you'd lock down this kind of crap so that way content publishers like me would want to use your images because images do lead to more conversions. That's simple.
Right.
That's straight up freaking internet physics. But no way am I going to put this kind of crap on my website. No way.
Well, here's the other thing that people got to realize about SourceForge. When you're an AdSense user, you can actually go in and choose and select not only what ad networks are allowed,
yeah.
but you can also choose what types of advertisements are allowed.
So
as
you're
well.
saying some of the
this
onus
this
is
is preventable. Don't give me the ad network crap. This
That's
is
a good
preventable.
point. They could. I mean, Google shouldn't be putting these in here.
They shouldn't, but you can't. But
they could be filtering these out.
Yeah, they're both responsible. SourceForge
Yeah.
can absolutely do
Good
something
call.
about it because I've had to do it myself.
You're right. So that wasn't the only beef though.
No.
The ads weren't the only beef. They also they were willing to tolerate them until SourceForge's new Windows installer came along. As the devs noted, that tool bundles third-party offers with free software packages. So you can have free software and then, hey, would you like to install the ANS toolbar? We don't want to support that kind of behavior and thus have decided to abandon SourceForge, they say.
And it's a tough thing for SourceForge because I get the attraction because some of those, not Ask specifically, but I think some of them pay like, I don't know, 50 cents to $1 a download. I mean, it's like it's a pretty decent amount of money. And, you know, you get enough people doing that, that's some real bank in your buck.
Yep.
So if you got a bunch of people going to SourceForge with ad blocker, you know, this is a revenue source for them. They need to investigate an alternative because this isn't a very plausible way to go.
I would say
not going to work.
I would say go donate to GIMP. If you're a GIMP user and you support them getting off SourceForge,
that's a great idea.
Because they're bringing these costs onto themselves now to host these mirrors themselves. And they accept Flatter and Bitcoin. So if you got one or the other, I'd say you go over to gimp.org and toss them some scratch.
Well, and why not, you know, not to be overly obvious about it, but why not actually look at, I don't know, BitTorrent for distribution, as well as, and in addition to that, there are some alternatives out there, BitTorrent Sync, you know, maybe at some point that could be,
you know, you think about it, how lucky in a sense, in terms of bandwidth usage they are, that so many distros distribute it from the repo directly.
Right, exactly.
Saves them a ton of bandwidth. Okay. So the big upset.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Canonical abused trademark law to target a site critical of Ubuntu privacy. Or you could take the Wired version, which was Canonical launches a campaign to silence Ubuntu critics.
Oh boy.
Oh, man.
I'm really glad that they didn't sensationalize.
Right. We wouldn't want to have our Linux news just be a driver for clicks, would we?
God, no.
So, okay. Let's cover this, you know, bit by bit here. So let's start with the Ars Technica article, which I believe...
And most importantly, written by people that don't actually understand the law, because that helps.
Right.
That's my favorite part.
And I think the reason why I'm choosing to pick on Ars, first of all, I think I'm more of an Ars fan than you are. But
I used to be, but anymore it's just like...
I like them for a lot of their stuff.
I used to be a big fan, but I think they're gravitating toward trying to pay their bills. And
well, this would seem to indicate that.
Yeah,
so
and I get it, but still.
If you didn't catch what happened, I don't know if we covered Ubuntu. I think we might have mentioned it in Linux Sucks or Linux Sucks. Linux Unplugged. We might have mentioned Ubuntu Sucks, right? It was like Ubuntu Sucks or something like that.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it in Unplugged. Anyways, to the point that I was going to make is Canonical sent them a letter. You know, it wasn't awful. Essentially, the letter said, unfortunately, in this instance, we cannot give you permission to use the Ubuntu trademarks on your website and in your domain name, as they may lead to confusion or misunderstanding that your website is associated with Canonical or Ubuntu. So, whilst, yes, they actually said whilst, we are very happy to inform you to write, we are very happy for you to write about Ubuntu. We request that you remove Ubuntu word from your domain name and Ubuntu logo from your website. Fix Ubuntu.
First of all, the quote that you did, Ars, of course, in their infinite wisdom, kind of forgot a little piece of information that came in the original letter. The word paralegal was also included in that original email.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but but that doesn't sensationalize. We got to leave that out. So you basically have the basically an intern, for lack of a better description. Also, the fact that they were technically incorrect in part of their fair use terminology. The way it basically breaks down here in the U.S. is that you can use the bare essential to make your point. So in their particular instance, they were perfectly allowed to say Ubuntu, but they couldn't have Ubuntu and the logo because that's considered overdoing it. And you can actually check the EFF for backing up that statement because that is a factually true statement. And so they didn't, so they not only didn't do it right, but then they didn't offer a real good alternative other than just remove everything, which was actually overkill and wasn't actually the proper way to handle it.
Yeah, and a lot of people
they were kind of correct.
A lot of people took this as Canonical trying to silence a critic, right?
Yes.
And so,
how dare you enforce the law?
Pretty smartly, the author of the site, Lee, he contacted the EFF.
Yeah. Which was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and the EFF said that it's well settled that the First Amendment fully protects the use of trademark terms and logos in non-commercial websites that criticize and comment upon corporations and products. Mr.
right.
Lee's site is a clear example of such protected speech. Neither Mr. Lee nor any other member of the public must seek your permission before engaging in such constitutionally protected expressions.
Yep.
So, you know,
and see that's correct. But the big takeaway though is the fact that you can't, and again it's really splitting hairs for Canonical to even go after this. But I think that being like if it was non-Linux and it was something completely unrelated, maybe I'm talking about Mattel toys or something like that. If I'm using their name and their logo, I'm going to get sued. It's going to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, and the thing about being sued is even if you're right, you're still going to court. It doesn't matter. So understand these bigger pictures. So just bear that in mind.
I kind of feel like I can see both sides because like if you've got like a Jupiter Broadcasting suck site. And they're using the Jupiter Broadcasting logo, and they have Jupiter Broadcasting in the name, I would just prefer from them not being a dick, not to use, don't use my logo and my name to legitimize what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
You can critique me all you want, but don't build the what he's doing.
And they could have done it if they did a Ghostbusters sign through Jupiter Broadcasting logo. That's legally fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
He's using the brand weight of Ubuntu and Canonical to make legitimate what he's saying and doing.
Yep.
And I think what Canonical was worried about is inexperienced users might think that they like here's a fix site for Ubuntu. Their response was pretty weak on Canonical's part, obviously, and the open source community. Is a little more
over sensationalized a little.
Well, yeah, but they're a little more permissive on the use of this kind of stuff. And Mark took to his blog, which I think is more interesting than a lot of things. That Canonical really felt like they needed to respond to this. And Mark said last week, the less than a month at a Canonical new employee guy sent out the toughest template to folks behind a suck site.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of to me felt a little weird that they're sort of blaming a new guy for this.
Well, it does happen, and I think they're trying to justify what happened. That be that as they may, I still think Canonical handled it really, really poorly. There's no argument there, but again, I think that people need to understand using Ubuntu and the domain name is against the trademark policy.
So is that so? Okay, so like Grey Wolf is saying right now in the chat room that a company has to protect its trademark or it risks losing it.
That's right.
I don't actually know if that is true. I know that
it depends on the context of your company.
I think that's one of those things we all repeat so much that we think it's true. But I think the only context in which that is true is if somebody is making a commercial product using your branding. And if they're not making a commercial for-profit product, that is within the only scenario in which it is required by law that you defend your trademark. I don't believe outside of that scenario it is actually required by law.
Well, I think from an innocence point of view, it can totally, like in this case, it was very innocently used. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that as soon as it creates confusion, you will end up in court.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just a fact. Now, you may win if you've got the money to go against a laundry list of lawyers. But my point is you can be right all day long, but you may be finding yourself living in a cardboard box over it. You really need to decide where you're at with that because it's the law's not on your side. It just isn't.
Shuttleworth went on to say the internet's went wild. Wired picked up a headline accusing Canonical of a campaign to suppress critics. Debian started arguing about whether it should remove all references to the distro that shall not be named, but then decided to argue about whether it would enforce its own trademarks, which led to another argument about never mind.
Oh, my goodness.
I kind of feel like that's a bit of a swipe at showing that without a leader, all these communities just devolve into infighting.
Well, they
felt like it was
do.
a swipe at
They
that.
do. And in the community's defense, I also understand that there's a lot of ill feelings and animosity and frustration and whatnot that's already
you
there.
think?
Yeah, so I mean, I get at that. I mean, there's a lot. It's already stewing and bubbling and whatnot.
That's the meta
That's
story.
why I think this blew up so quickly. Is the news outlets knew this? They knew full well they could run with it, and you guys were going to jump all over it and spoon feed yourselves with it. But I think that the fact is the community's legitimately pissed off.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, Canonical seems like they have spent all goodwill because the community was not just like ready, but like ready and willing to jump on them for this kind of thing. And I think that speaks to what a hole they've dug themselves. And I think maybe that's why Mark kind of addressed some of these. He says, on another more personal note, I made a mistake myself when I used the label Open Source Tea Party to refer, get ready for this, Matt, to the vocal, non-technical critics that on the work that Canonical does.
And see, Mark, you started out with the right approach, and then you took away any value from it by trying to label them. Stop trying to label people. You'll do better with it.
Yeah.
I you know, I'm just saying.
He says,
Don't
for the
label
record,
folks.
technical critiques of open source software is part of what makes open software so good. But he even apologized to the non-technical. I don't really know what he means because
he's trying to contain, you know, he's trying to be right.
Yeah.
Is essentially what it comes down to. And sometimes you just got to let go of stuff, you know. That's community and Mark both.
Do you think that legitimately it was them trying to silence this guy a little bit? Like, do you think not, like, let's take away if they were right or they wrong or what the trademark use is, but do you think they saw this and they're like, man, I'm just so sick and tired of people dogging on us?
I think it gives them, and it's going to sound kind of mean, I think it gives them too much credit to think they put that much thought into it, honestly. Is it plausible? Sure. Do I think they actually did that? There's way more things that are much more effective to silence than that, quite honestly.
So where I come down on this is like, look, there's plenty of problems you could take up.
It's not even low-hanging fruit. I mean,
this is not. This is how companies unfortunately operate.
Yeah, it really is.
And I don't really share the internet's rage over this. To me, not only does it not initially seem like a big deal, but now we have seen a full-fledged canonical response from the top. Didn't even have to have a Jono article that trying to smooth everything over because Mark did a great job on his own.
On that piece of it. The rest of his message was a little flawed, but, you know, but that piece was good. That piece was good.
At the same time, they're not fixing the problems.
No, and see, this is my big gripe with trademark policy and various things like that is, you know, don't just tell people what they can't do. Offer them tools and things to work with so that they can remain in compliance with both the law and your own policies, but not come across like a douchebag. You know, I'm just saying, you got to kind of find a balance there, and I don't think that they're really addressing that well. I think they need to find a way to revisit their template, if you will.
Gosh, but the response, the jubilance to SteamOS not being based on Ubuntu, followed by just people dogpiling on Canonical over this, it really is a clear indication of where the community is at in terms of their relationship with Ubuntu and Canonical.
And this is the part where I lean in real close to the mic and say I've worked with 3 companies in my lifetime that had serious branding problems. And if you want help with that, contact me because, my God, I'm going to tell you right now, you keep up the way you're going, guys, and you're going to end up being Linspire.
And I agree with II in the chat room.
Saying.
It is...
it's not even about whether it's accurate. It's what's happening.
It smacks me a little bit when the guy at the top is calling out a guy at the bottom.
Yeah.
It should never happen like that. The guy at the top always takes the fall, or you don't mention it at all. You just say it was a mistake and you move on, and you internally could reprimand the person.
Right.
But you generally don't publicly reprimand a new guy like that. I mean, it's just...
The whole causality was wrong. The way it should have been handled was someone did something that was boneheaded. Unfortunately, I have to bear ultimate responsibility. I'm going to personally do blankety blank to resolve the issue. Me, my fault. It's all about, as you pointed out, it's the guy at the top.
Well, okay, so like
causality's fine.
Hidden Dreams says, tell that to Apple, which I don't even know what that means because let's take Apple Maps, for example.
Sure.
iOS 6 rolls out, Apple Maps is a car
awesome.
wreck.
Yeah, it literally had people driving off bridges.
Literally a car wreck, right? Yeah. So Apple's response is an open letter from Tim Cook that says, my bad, super sorry about this, you guys. Yeah. We're going to try to work on this, and we're hiring a bunch of people to fix it. And then quietly, behind the scenes, Tim Cook fires one of the most important people at Apple, Scott Forstall.
Right.
The guy who came from Next, the creator of iOS, the creator of Objective-C. Scott Forstall was integral to all of that. But because he effed up on Maps and then wouldn't take responsibility for it, Cook canned his ass. But
so Cook gave him the opportunity to own up to it, and he chose not to? Is that
right?
Okay.
And
well,
then publicly,
then that's fair.
And then when that happened, Cook took it on himself. There's a letter on Apple's website. Cook takes on that responsibility. Right. I'm sorry. Buck stops with me. Right. My bad. Doesn't blame Forstall at all, and then silently fires his ass in the background.
Well, and also let's look at the difference between trademark usage and potentially getting people lost in really bad neighborhoods or worse. Lost in the mountains or something horrible. I mean, it's the value of importance between the two and actual effects of it are a little different too. So I think that's an interesting comparison.
Not the same situation, but I mean, in the chat room they're saying, "Well, Apple would have done." I don't get that.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm not an Apple fan. There's lots of things I can hate Apple all day long for other reasons. But that's not.
You could have issues with both these companies. But going back to Canonical, there's plenty of problems you can have with Canonical and the trademark thing. This is just how companies operate. I
was going to say, I've watched Kevin Rose explain Dig's position at one point very clearly where they actually had to deal with something like this. Reddit has had to deal with issues like this. This is common stuff, folks. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
So,
And usually,
but it could have been handled better.
And usually you're just so small that you get effed, and there's nothing you can do about it, or you get to a size where there's something you can do about it, but then you take hate for doing something about it.
So before I get misquoted and saying Matt's in favor of blah, 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 no. What I'm saying is that Canonical should have handled it better with a better policy, clearer policy, and some alternatives, and the person that was doing it needs to actually read up on how fair use works before he makes blanket statements.
And I'll end with this, maybe. I feel like this is a clear sign that Canonical's relationship with the community is absolutely on fire. It is imploding.
They are in real trouble. I mean that legitimately. I've seen this 3 times, and 2 of the times it wasn't saved, and 1 time it was. You guys are in very, very critical mode right now.
You know what, Matt? That brings us to the end of the news, which is probably perfect because we can go talk with Jos, who's openSUSE's community manager.
All right.
Now, we're going to have a chance to talk with Jos from the openSUSE camp. He's their community manager. He has been the openSUSE community manager since 2010. He's a free software evangelist for 10 years, and he's an active KDE contributor. So I'm really looking forward to asking him some of the questions that you guys have sent in. We're going to talk a little about openSUSE 13.1 and all of that. But before we get started, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System76.
Oh, yes.
Creators of machines designed, built, born to run Ubuntu Linux. And right now I'm running Arch Linux on there because one of the things that's great about System76 is they make sure that the machine you buy today is going to run Linux good for years to come. And once you support Linux, my friends, you support any distribution you want. But they sell these totally packaged, ready to go. You could get these work great for enthusiasts or for beginners. And the great thing about System76 is they're an active contributor in the open source community. They participate upstream. They contribute hardware to open source groups, and they're part of the Linux ecosystem. So when you're buying from System76, you're buying from a local Linux ecosystem vendor. So a big thanks to System76. I love my Bonobo Extreme, and I can't wait to check out that Leopard Extreme. I believe we have one coming our way, Matt.
That is what I've been told.
That is the rumor.
They were waiting on a piece of hardware for it, and it should be on its
way.
Truly
professional grade hardware from System76. Go over there and check them out. Get yourself something nice and tell them the Linux Action Show sent you.
Liquid-cooled goodness.
Well, Jos, welcome to the Linux Action Show. Thank you so much for working with us through various technical issues that we had today.
Well, good to be here, guys.
And you're about to catch a flight to go to SUSECon, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And after that, the openSUSE Summit, even better.
Wow.
Right on.
Wow, there's a lot coming on. Plus, the 13.1 release is just around the corner as well. So it's very busy times. Yeah. So why don't we get started with a couple of the basics, and then we'll kind of go through some questions that the listeners submitted, and then we'll get into looking towards openSUSE 13.1. And I wanted to start with probably the most basic. What are the responsibilities of a community manager? What does Jos do?
Well, it changes actually a fair bit over time. Currently, I'm mostly doing the communication of the openSUSE team at SUSE, so the people at SUSE who, are responsible for the work on the SUSE side. So keep infrastructure running, keep the release process going, and try and help improve those processes, of course. And I, of course, do a lot of the marketing around openSUSE. So most of the marketing for a release, at least, is coordinated by me. Obviously, I can't do it alone without all the other people helping out everywhere. But that's a big part. Same goes for the conference and other things. I try and keep the community informed about those things. That's currently the biggest chunk of my work. And obviously there is also, things in the community, conflicts perhaps need to deal with.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Communication in general,
And you live in Germany, right? So is there time zone hurdles that sort of get in your way, or is that not a problem?
Well, used to live in the Netherlands, but I've also been in Brazil for quite a bit. I used to have a sleeping pattern where I would get up pretty late and get in bed pretty late because, that would fit better with the fact that most people in Europe would be active in the evening, and you would also catch people in the morning and the afternoon in the US that way. But lately I've been trying to follow a more healthy sleep pattern, which actually helps getting stuff done sometimes.
Makes sense.
It does. So, one of the things that I know about openSUSE, but I've never quite understood, and I thought maybe you'd be just the right person to explain it to me, is what is the role of the openSUSE board? Is it a governance board? I noticed that one of their functionalities is like dispute resolution and things like that. Could you give me more details on how the openSUSE board directly affects the openSUSE distribution?
Well, the board makes it a point to try and stay out of technical development as much as possible. I think that's a good thing, unless, of course, there are issues in that regard. And then, because most of them are involved on the technical side of things, on the personal title, they do have the ability to play a role there. But in general, they try and do things like events, including the openSUSE conference, the openSUSE summit. They are already, preparing for the next openSUSE conference next year. And one of the board members pretty much has done, I don't know, 80, well, I wouldn't say 80%, but at least half the work for the openSUSE summit.
Okay.
So things like that.
So and evangelism is a big part of it.
Travel support program and, handling funds.
One thing,
so a travel support program.
This week we had a big hoopla around Canonical and the whole trademark spat, and I noticed on the openSUSE site, one of the descriptions of the openSUSE board is enforcing trademark issues. So I was just wondering, to your knowledge, has openSUSE ever had a confrontation around brand and trademark problems like we just seen with Canonical recently?
A real confrontation. I mean, I know the board handles these, and sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. It's basically requests that are sent their way. But I'm not aware of any big disputes. I mean, obviously there would have been, if they would have been big, I would have known. So
yeah,
apparently nothing big enough. It really come out now. And I mean, obviously what happened there seemed to be more about Canonical trying to push criticism away than handling a trademark issue, to be honest. But that's what it seems.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something the openSUSE board, I think, isn't very likely to do.
Well, and something that you guys do that I always thought was awesome is when I go to build a distro based on openSUSE, you guys actually have the ability to provide a trademark-free experience. If I'm not mistaken, you can actually choose packages that make that a moot issue, which is what drew me to creating my own pretty early on. I was like, well, that's awesome.
That's a good jumping point, too, is Josh. So, you guys have some this is part of the community. Over the last few years, openSUSE with the build service and software.opensuse.org, really awesome, powerful stuff. Great tools to make your own, just spin up your own images based on SUSE. Why do you suppose at this point, I mean, there's not a lot of popular distros out there that are based on SUSE other than SUSE. Like, you look at Debian or Ubuntu, Arch, or even Fedora, there's a lot of derivatives from those that are based as, their bases, like Debian, for example. openSUSE has been around or SUSE in some form or another, been around for a really long time. Why do you suppose we don't see a lot of spin-offs of SUSE, even though the tools are there?
Well, there are a lot of spin-offs, obviously, on SUSE Studio, but yeah, none of them are really very prominent or well-known. I don't really know, considering I think you're right that it's, well, easier than on pretty much any distro to build a derivative on openSUSE. But I think what might be the reason, actually, is the way we are very open for other people to join us instead of build something new. I mean, if you know the guys who were doing, what was the name? Fuduntu?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They first, decided to build on openSUSE instead. So initially, they started the Cloverleaf, I believe, Linux project. But quickly after that, they simply decided to join openSUSE. And now they're doing packaging just for the next openSUSE release. And this might actually explain a lot of why there aren't big derivatives. You can do what you want in openSUSE without being told go do it somewhere else. And we're more open than other distros in that aspect. So that might actually be the reason for it.
Very well.
I mean, I think it plays a role.
Well, and I would also imagine that there's a lot of distros that are very much internally used, that maybe people aren't making a lot of hoopla about, that are used in various companies and various learning environments and things like that.
Well, that's what Studio is all about. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of images on there built by people just to get something done in-house for companies or private.
That makes total sense. So it could be, we talk about a lot of times on our Coder Radio program that one of the most popular languages still is VB because a lot of internal projects are using it. And I think about it, you have SUSE Enterprise on the server, so why not go spin your own internal for the desktops, right? And it could just be thousands of little micro distros out there.
Yes.
I wanted to shift gears and ask some questions from the audience, and then we'll get into openSUSE 13.1. So viewer Stefan, who's in your neck of the woods, wrote in, and first of all, he wants to know how you're liking life in Berlin.
Wonderful. Awesome city.
Good. And he says, do you see a point in the future when openSUSE becomes irrelevant to SUSE, the company, and I'm assuming he says then look going, will they reduce or stop sponsorship, much like it's sort of happened as LibreOffice has become less important to their overall mission?
Well, LibreOffice became less important because they wanted to focus stronger and more on SUSE Linux Enterprise. openSUSE being the base of that, it sounds very unlikely that suddenly openSUSE will become irrelevant. I mean, the time SUSE stops being an enterprise Linux vendor, well, is also pretty much the day, well, what is SUSE then? So, on one hand, I mean, I don't think the comparison with LibreOffice makes much sense, because that never was a core thing.
Sure.
And on the other hand, if it would happen, yeah, I don't think there's much SUSE left at that point. I mean, SUSE does.
So they're pretty connected. They're pretty intertwined.
Yeah. But it's a core thing, of course. Our core business is SUSE Linux Enterprise and all its various incarnations, and of course the management around it. But in the end, I mean, I would earlier see openSUSE become more important for SUSE. For example, in clouds, you often need to deploy, cheap, easy, up-to-date images on clouds. Well, openSUSE could play a bigger role, as example. So, and SUSE offering a better upgrade path from openSUSE to SUSE Linux Enterprise is actually something we want to work on.
I see.
Makes sense.
So I would say it's going the other way at the moment.
That makes sense. All right, well, Pierre 4L wants to shift gears to the desktop, and he's got some questions regarding the possibility of a software center-like experience in some future version of openSUSE. And his first question is do you think it is a fundamental feature lacking in openSUSE compared to another distro, or do you think there are other priorities in terms of a software store or center-type interface, just on a very general level for openSUSE?
Well, this is something we have been debating for a while. We have, of course, one-click install and software.opensuse.org/packages, which is very much a App Store-like interface, but it does lack some polish and the finishing touch that you would see in, other App Stores, obviously, and especially there's no commercial software in there.
Sure.
Now, the thing is, to be able to have a proper App Store with commercial software, you would need somebody who says, look, I'm going to build a business around this. And SUSE has repeatedly said, and that's still our official statement, we do not want to monetize openSUSE. Because if we start to build a business on openSUSE instead of on SUSE Linux Enterprise, which is built on it, it starts to become complicated to build openSUSE as an ecosystem, which is what SUSE wants, right? SUSE wants other companies to be involved in openSUSE. So SUSE, again, doesn't really look to building something like that. However, we are very open, as in very inviting towards a company who says, look, I see that as a business model. We have pretty good statistics on how many users we have, about 440,000. That's twice as much as Fedora. If you're interested in that user base and you want to try and sell them software, hey, we'll help you, from the SUSE side. But the business, we don't want the business. We want, of course, the benefit for our users. So someone else can come and make money on that if they are interested.
Well, that sounds pretty reasonable. I was actually going to ask this question myself before the chat room did, is I would love to see some sort of a wrap around, even just around the existing the one-click install, just something that's there on the desktop that I can pound into and immediately find software discovery of the,
Those things are coming.
Yeah.
Those things are coming.
Cool.
There's a new version of one-click install that barely made it into, or barely not made it. How do you say that in English?
Almost made it, yeah.
Just make it in, but it's going to make it for next release. So that's at least it's going to make one-click install live up. I think is already a nice step forward. And I am expecting. I mean, there are App Store efforts going on a free desktop around PackageKit, and we will ship that as soon as that becomes available.
Very cool.
Some effort into polishing that. I mean, we have had the Summer of Code, Google Summer of Code, to polish under the openSUSE umbrella for PackageKit to polish the Ubuntu Software Center up so other distributions could use it. And that was under one of our Google Summer of Code slots. And we will definitely continue to support efforts like that.
Very cool.
But again, to really do this properly, I think you need a company that says, we want to do this. And again, we'd love to see companies step forward.
How do you, now, of course, you can't speak for everyone there, but what's your general take on the reception to Steam? Steam is introducing not just games, but they're going to deliver applications. There's going to be SteamOS. People are, I saw in, the software service, there's current builds of Steam available to openSUSE users. They can just go grab them, install it super easy.
Yes.
What would you say the SUSE community's take is on Steam and sort of what it's going to provide to the Linux desktop? Good, bad, mixed? Do you feel like there's a way you can make openSUSE a key player in that? What are your thoughts?
In terms of speaking for openSUSE, I've seen enthusiasm. I mean, obviously people are packaging it and playing with it. I haven't played with it myself. And I haven't seen huge discussions about it either, so I don't really feel like I can say what openSUSE thinks about it.
Okay,
personally, I think it's terribly exciting stuff, and I'm kind of looking forward to what comes out of it. I mean, if Steam manages to become a de facto app store for Linux, I would welcome that. I think it's cool. I just hope, and I haven't looked into that yet, but I just hope that their app store is open and friendly to open source software, because now that is still what we're doing.
Yeah,
makes sense.
And that is something I don't know, honestly. You guys might know more about that, but that is something I could be worried about.
It's kind of locked down at this point, but who knows what the future will hold.
This is true.
I agree. That is a big point of it, and because my main thing is I'd hate to see every distribution build up their own unique app store. I'd like to see a common.
That's why I was talking about AppStream.
That's a great example.
Yeah, we want to do this, in a way that others benefit. I mean, I don't want to get on my collaboration is the better way of doing it, horse, but yeah. We believe.
Okay, I've got one more viewer question, and he asked two questions, and then I want to chat about 13.1. So Martin wrote in, and the first question he says, how would you position openSUSE within the Linux ecosystem? I.e., what kind of users does it attract? How would you say it's differentiating itself? That kind of thing.
Well, that's actually not terribly complicated to answer. If you compare openSUSE to, say, Fedora, I mean, they have, the F's, friends, and first, and features. Well, I think features and first, points towards what Fedora is all about, advancing the state of technology, and they're doing an incredibly good job at that. But if you want to run a system and get stuff done, and I think, again, the user statistics speak for that, it's not the best choice, because, well, with features first come stability issues.
Sure.
And we have a much stronger focus, I think, than at least most of the other Linux distros, especially the top Linux distros, on providing a stable work, something that you can really use to get work done.
Mm-hmm.
SUSE has always had a very pragmatic look at things there, and I think that this is what attracts people, and that's what sets it apart in the Linux ecosystem.
So his second question, and I'm kind of curious about this myself, is how do you see openSUSE developing more mindshare and market share in the future? Like, is there sort of any kind of thoughts you have regarding solving that particular problem?
It depends a bit on what direction we take, of course. We're currently a little bit trying to do everything at once. Last time we had discussions about strategy was when I just joined the openSUSE community. And back then, I simply tried to guide the discussion in the direction of describing what we were doing at that point, and not, make any hard decisions, because I felt if you don't first know who you are, you can't really define who you want to be. But now we are kind of restarting those discussions, and perhaps we are going to find more of a who we want to be this time. And, well, I would say, personally, this point that I was just making about openSUSE focusing more on people who want to get stuff done,
mm-hmm.
I would argue that focusing more on that and focusing less on trying to be everything, it would be a good move. I mean, for example, openSUSE currently has 6,000 packages. Are they all of the same quality? Are they all equally relevant for people who need to get work done? Maybe not. If maybe we can improve quality, we're going down to 3,000. I mean, after all, we have the open build service. We have one-click install. We will get app stores in the future. People already have tens of thousands of packages, hundreds of thousands, actually, at their disposal on the build service. They don't really need to be in openSUSE anymore. So But again, this would require some, thinking, debating, and
changes.
Well, work.
Sure.
Right.
That's interesting. I mean, it kind of sounds like openSUSE, as the market is evolving, openSUSE is sort of defining itself as, to put it quite bluntly, a distribution for grown-ups. Like, let's sit down, let's just get some work done. Here's the latest and greatest in open source. And sort of transitioning to 13.1, was it you that wrote the sneak peek openSUSE 13.1 post for on the news.opensuse.org site? Or I don't know who wrote those, but man, those were great.
Yeah, they were.
They had the look at GNOME and KDE desktops, both of which just, even though I'm using both the desktops right now, made my mouth water in anticipation.
Yeah.
And it really is kind of highlighting, you guys are really showing here, like, look how refined the Linux desktop is. So my question is to you, with 13.1, is the underlying stuff in Linux getting a little more boring? Is Linux itself getting a little more boring, and so we're focusing on other things now? Or 13.1 to me seems very much like, here's the new stuff that the upstream providers are bringing you, and not so much, here's what we've done at openSUSE in this 13.1 release, even though there has been some stuff under the hood. And I'm wondering, was that an intentional tone you're setting?
Well, for this release, we have very much focused our own time and work on stability. We have this OpenQ&A, this automated testing framework, and we did a lot of work on making that, better and test more, cover a lot more ground. So yeah, the focus has been on stability instead of features. Yeah. I don't think that necessarily means there are no more features that we would like to have.
Well, and there was one major new feature, right? Yast, I mean, this is one of many, but Yast has been converted to Ruby, right? Can you tell me about that?
Yes. Well, you just said it, because essentially that is the major change. They converted to Ruby and then made sure that it, is still stable and good. And this is really something, for the future. From now on, if you want to hack on Yast, you don't need to learn a complete new language anymore.
Right.
And I think it's a pretty big deal, because it used to be very painful to hack on Yast. Even the Yast hackers themselves would say that. So I think this is indeed a big deal when it comes to openSUSE infrastructure, that, Yast being our Ruby tool. Okay. But there's still some pushing to be done there.
Also in 13.1, and I can't remember if this is your first release to do this or if it happened a release ago, but ButterFS, default file system. Now that kind of seems to be a bit contradictory to about stability and polish, because ButterFS, while stable, is kind of new.
It's not default. So this is actually the thing that was proposed. So we have one of the core ButterFS developers in our camp at SUSE, and he had basically come up with the idea, or at least he and probably others, I don't know exactly, but they came up with the idea to have ButterFS by default only do what is stable, what is safe. And all the fancy extra features like RAID and the transparent compression, the deduplication of files, all these fancy features would be disabled by default, and you would explicitly have to, boot up with a certain flag, like please kill my system ButterFS, and then it would. Nice. So he then said, look, this is as stable as ext4, which is our default. How about we make a default? Now, the community had a big discussion about it, and in the end decided against it for indeed stability, and it was a bit late in the cycle, etc. So what we did instead was we gave it a good workout. We made a default actually for the beta, just the beta, so people would test it extra. And then in the release candidates, it was not default, neither was it in the final release, but the plan is for the next round, the next distro, it's pretty much on its way. Yes, it's coming, absolutely. But again, we will ship it again with this flag that you would need to set to enable the, less safe but fancy features. So I can totally say, if you install openSUSE 13.1 with ButterFS, you are safe as house. I mean, nothing's perfect. X3 and X4 can break too. Yeah. But, the developer himself, he said, as far as I'm concerned, this is as stable as X4. It's not as stable as X3, that has been around a lot longer. But, if you're willing to accept ext4, then ButterFS, in the form we are shipping it, it's safe. It's good to go. You can play with it. You should. It's not, yeah, I
Ready
mean,
to kick the
it
tires.
takes a lot of the fancy features now, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Cool.
you might think, why would I do it? But those features are going to get enabled in the future, and you're going to benefit from it. So that's the reason to use.
The other,
I'm personally not happy with the performance at the moment, but that's a thing again that will get fixed, I think.
the other thing that kind of jumped out at me is openSUSE's embracement of systemd.
Yeah.
And you guys are kind of helping set a new direction for Linux as a whole, because it wasn't wholly a Red Hat only project. Other distros were looking at it, but when SUSE came along and said, well, we're going to ship systemd too, even though Red Hat is technically your competitor, that seemed to me to be a pretty big statement. And I wonder, do you have any thoughts, anything you've collected from the community and from developers on switching to systemd and any of that? Any kind of just general thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, one of the core systemd developers worked for us, for SUSE. So initially, that made it easier, obviously, for us to move. And second of all, Leonard, who, by the way, lives here a couple of blocks away, so I can beat him up anytime I want.
Nice. Good feature.
Leonard and the other systemd developers have been very accommodating to other distros. And I say other distros here because they have been very accommodating to Debian and Arch and any distro. And again, their vision, this is my personal opinion, but their vision makes a lot of sense. I mean, making something, making Linux the best it can be, instead of hampering it with, compatibility for, sub 1% systems, I think makes sense. I'm sorry for Debian in this regard. I know they have a tough choice here.
Yeah, they do.
But this makes sense, and systemd is technically superior. It's it's doing a lot of things that used to be working. But let me put it this way: if you want to move on to the future, you got to make choices at some point. And systemd is a system that's clearly designed for the future of free software in general. And I think that is again my personal opinion. That's why it's a good idea to stay close to something like that, because it's moving forward. Yeah. Instead of kind of being stuck. It's like when we had to move to dynamically mounting devices.
Right.
Oh, man.
That was painful,
yeah.
But it was necessary because, come on, can you imagine these days that you wouldn't be able to dynamically mount something, when you plug a USB stick?
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Systemd is going to be just like that. Honestly, I don't think they're really a serious competition. No offense to the upstart guys, but yeah, that's how I see it.
Well, let's stay controversial then. So the chat room wants to know about openSUSE's future plans with Wayland. Now, I want to talk about 13.1 next, but really, this is not a 13.1 question so much, but obviously there's a big change coming up with the display server technologies. You got the Canonical camp with Mir, and then you got everybody else throwing down on Wayland. Yeah. Do you guys have any kind of firm plans with like KDE 5 and Wayland support? openSUSE has always been such a great KDE distribution. I got to imagine you guys at least have to be talking about, we want to ship when it's ready. We want to be one of the first, right?
openSUSE 13.1 ships with experimental Wayland support in both GNOME and KDE.
Wow.
Do you want to hear more? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that's very cool.
Look, the point there is, I think, it's very similar to systemd in the technical aspect. I mean, when it comes to Wayland, I don't want to go into that too deeply, but the way I've seen it, when, there was a bit of a shitstorm about it, the way I saw it was like, okay, we had X. The guys who designed and developed X decided it didn't scale, so they made basically X12, the successor, Wayland. And then somebody else decides they can do better. Now, engineers often think they can do better, and they're usually wrong. That's how I see the whole thing that happened there. Mm-hmm. I understand, by the way, that there were personal relationships and there were goals that were getting in the way, right? Priorities. I totally understand there that Canonical had priorities to get certain stuff done. And in that regard, I can totally get that perhaps the Wayland team wasn't very open to that. I mean, I know there is some anonymity between people on both sides there, and that doesn't help, obviously, if you want to get stuff done. So I understand, but I would have understood a fork, even a temporary fork. But making something completely on your own and fracturing Linux desktop that way, I don't know, megalomania comes to mind. I don't think it makes much sense. But that's their choice. And
Sure.
We'll see where it goes, I suppose.
I don't see, I mean, again, we're the distro that always tries to collaborate with others because we think it's honestly stupid to try and do it your own way. I mean, Linspire did that, Sandros did that. I mean, what are their lasting contributions to free software?
Yeah, I watched them do that with not only their operating system, but I also watched them when Exandros bought them out, and then of course they tried to go alone with CNR as a standalone thing for all distros.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare.
Yeah.
This doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you don't work with others, I mean, yes, it's GPL what you do, but that means jack when you're doing it like Google, just throwing it over the fence. I mean, it doesn't mean anything that it's GPL if you're doing it in your own work.
Right.
If you're not working with others, what you do is meaningless for the free software world. And I know this is pretty harsh in the direction of some people, but that's how I see it.
Tough love.
So I want to talk about something that I think is pretty interesting, and I don't know if a lot of people who are not openSUSE followers know, but 13.1 is going to be what's called an evergreen release, right? Can you tell me what an evergreen release is?
Well, a couple of years ago, a bunch of openSUSE people basically said, look, you know, openSUSE is supported after release for about 18 months. That's 2 times 8 months plus 2 months of, grace period. And that's done by SUSE, by the security team, and they issue updates, etc. And that process back in the time was still closed. We've opened that up recently, or semi-recently. But to have longer support for releases, at least for a core of it. Initially, it was mostly, the server, the underlying stuff that was supported. So they first tried, I believe, with openSUSE 11.3.
Yeah.
Perhaps 4. First 11.3, then 11.4. And, well, that worked out. They did a pretty good job at keeping things alive, getting security updates in, etc. And they called it the Evergreen team. I mean, I'm hoping I don't need to explain that pun to you.
That makes sense.
And now, when we started working on openSUSE 1, at some point I said, well, we need to pick another one that we're going to support a bit longer. I mean, you can't keep everything supported. And, well, with 13.1 going, having such a big focus on stability, and timing-wise for them, it all came together, and they said, okay, let's announce it well in time. Let's say this is going to be a stable openSUSE for, 3 years. So I think that's excellent. And in the future, this might become, more of a regular thing, because we realize, of course, that this means a lot to people, that this is a very useful thing to have.
Yeah.
Commitment like that. So that's definitely going to continue. I mean, not just by them, but I think this effort is going to, become a community-wide thing. As I said, we've opened our maintenance process. And, if openSUSE Factory would become smaller, that also makes it more manageable for an effort like Evergreen, and also for the SUSE engineers and the time they have to put into maintenance. So at the openSUSE conference, our VP of engineering basically already said, look, if the scope of Factory becomes smaller, that means I can justify putting a longer maintenance period on it, simply because the same amount of resources can do more. Mm-hmm. So SUSE is even, with some caveats, including we need to, of course, make a decision there, but we're on board with this if openSUSE wants to go in that direction, and I think it will.
That's awesome. So, 13.1 is near, about 8 days away. We're going to be reviewing it in next week's episode of the Linux Action Show. Okay. Is there anything you want to draw to people's attention? I know you also have some conventions coming up, so give us a little update on sort of what you're looking forward to on 13.1, and maybe a little bit about the conventions you're heading off to as soon as we wrap up here.
Yeah. Well, conventions, let's start with that quickly. SUSECon, it's SUSE's premier event. It's in Florida. Lake Buena Vista, I believe, or close thereby. I haven't been there yet, so I don't know the lay of the land, but I'll see that next week. But on Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday morning, it's going to be the openSUSE Summit, which is basically the openSUSE event for the Americas. So if you don't know what to do yet that weekend, and you might have a flight you can book still, then, come and visit us, because that's definitely going to be a real cool event. It was great last year.
Yeah.
It'll be great this year. On the release side, we as usual are going to do a big write-up. We already did some write-up. You guys already scrolled through some things. Mm-hmm. So I think most of the cool stuff has been mentioned. One thing I personally appreciate is the Android integration. I recently got myself a new phone, the HTC One.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
First Android phone. It's definitely real nice hardware.
Yeah.
I used to have an Nokia N9, which is definitely still in terms of UI, I'm sorry, but Android isn't there yet. But, the N9 was literally not working anymore. I mean, I couldn't make phone calls with it anymore. And at that point, the phone becomes rather obsolete.
Right.
Yeah, it becomes a kind of a thing just to carry around.
Yeah. Exactly. It becomes like a pack of gum that you never use.
Yeah.
So I decided, to jump on the Android bandwagon, which has been a pretty okay ride up until now. Lots of applications available. That's nice. And Yola just took too long. So the thing I really appreciate about the openSUSE 13.1 is that there's better Android integration in KDE at least. There is integration in the applications for file management. There is this tool called KDE Connect. You might have seen or read about.
We've covered it on the show. It's awesome.
Big fan.
Awesome, yes. I just used it a couple of days ago, and it is really cool. I mean, this is one of
you're telling me 13.1 has KDE Connect built in?
Well, you have to do a zipper install.
Okay, yeah.
That's easy. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think it's in the KDE XR repos. I believe you have to add the repo, but again, you go to software.opensuse.org, you look for it, and you click install.
Boom,
it's not hard. And, I think on Google Plus I said something like, this is a bit like, this is something I wouldn't have asked for, because I would have asked for a faster horse.
Oh, sure.
It's a car, it's really, it's a really cool tool. Quite excited about that.
Yeah, that is an exciting piece of desktop software, and it's an interesting take. I said it when we covered it before. It's probably my preferred take on integration of the desktops. Let the desktop do what it's really good at. Let the mobile do what it's really good at, but share information between them. And I think in your post you had mentioned something like your web browser had crashed, but you're able to send all of the contents from your clipboard to your phone and finish the job on the phone. I mean, how great is that?
That is so useful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I would, again, horses. I would have never thought about something like that. I would have said, well, Kio MTP, which is to share files, make that better. Yeah, that's the current horse we have. Make it easier to get files from there. Sharing clipboard, being able to control your music player. Hallelujah.
Yeah, right. Oh, that one right there, boy.
Yeah. This is absolutely exciting stuff.
Well, Jos, thank you so much for powering through any technical issues and also for chatting with us right before you take off for a flight. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap, or how should people get a hold of you and things like that?
Get a hold of me.
The Twitter, maybe?
SUSE.org. I mean, yes, and Twitter. I mean, I'm basically first name, last name, even on our on your IRC channel here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, I'm sure. I'm on Google+, I'm on Twitter. But Google+ is the best way of reaching me, because that's my network of choice these days.
Awesome.
Cool.
Google+. All right, we'll link to that in the show notes, too. Well, Jos, thank you very much for joining us, and have a safe trip.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much for powering through all the technical stuff. Boy.
Sorry about that. All right, well, have a good trip. And we'll be taking a look at 13.1 next week, so keep an eye out for that, too, okay?
I will. I will. Good.
Talk to you later.
Thanks.
And that brings us to the end of this week's show. Big thanks to Jos for joining us. Hey, Matt, before we get out of here, should we read some emails?
Definitely.
All right, Paul writes in, he says, when you're testing Linux distros, do you install them or run them in VirtualBox? The reason I ask is that I have found that actually installing them to be much harder in VirtualBox. I've been installing different installations on my MacBook Air and 2 other PCs. Ubuntu 13.10 has graphics errors, and the fan was running continually. Manjaro YouTube would not produce audio, and I could not get it to work, and I couldn't get a Firefox to install Flash. He says he also tried Solid XK, loaded it once, and after the reboot, refused to load the GUI.
And this was all from VirtualBox, I take it.
VirtualBox and a combination of hardware.
Okay.
But he was wondering, so his main question is how do we, when we review a distro, do we only run it in VirtualBox? Do we load it on a hardware? And this is one of those things where we've kind of answered on and off.
I can kind of elaborate on my approach.
Sure.
My approach for if I'm just looking at the GUI and available applications, I'm going to run it in VirtualBox because that's really all we're looking at. If I'm actually going to want to dive deeper into it and see how the how hardware detection works, how things actually gauge performance on different machines, I will actually then install it either on a USB flash drive or I'll just simply set aside a partition.
Yeah, you know, for me, I usually start on VirtualBox during the beta phase
to see if it's even worth your time.
Check in, you know, and then like RC, I might do one more VirtualBox install, but definitely by about RC and then the release. I was just looking at, I had it in here, but I don't have it handy. I have a little USB 3.0 hard drive.
Oh yeah,
that has an SSD. It's like one of those hybrid drives,
right?
And I put that here on the Bonobo, and I installed to that. And when I'm actually running for like after today's last, if we ever get this thing done, I'm going to go install openSUSE on that external hard drive, and I will run the remainder of the week in openSUSE natively.
Absolutely.
So I've been trying it in VirtualBox, trying out different stuff, because there's a lot that you can try. The installation, the package manager, all of that junk you can try through VirtualBox. But then when you want to try performance, compositing, things like that, then you go hardware.
And you want to try it on the cheap, and you're not necessarily wanting to go partition, but at the same time, you don't want to do VirtualBox. If you're using an Arch-based distribution, probably DD, the image, onto Flash. That works.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
UNet booting's another way to go.
Yeah, UNet booting works for everything other than Arch. If it's based on Arch, good luck. But yeah. Other than that, I would say those are some good options to check into.
Yeah. So Paul, thank you for asking, because it is something we don't always list out our specs. Yeah. I mean, you can always assume that, at least for my test machine, the specs were just the Bonobo. That's always what I'm trying it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, no matter what he's throwing at, he's running it on like this race car. So it's like, it's totally not an issue for performance. But and he's lucky in that regard.
Actually, and sometimes during reviews, on like Friday or Saturday, I'll be like, hey, Matt, so I've been running this on the Bonobo. How's it run on a? Because you got like a netbook.
I got this 1005 HA, triple E that I run it on, and it's a little Atom processor.
You got a System 76 rig you can run it on too.
I
so you got a range.
Yeah, I have a good machine to run.
You're better at testing on the lower end than I am, because I'm always at the higher end of the spectrum. And I'll oftentimes like, so did you try this? And Matt, I'll be like, yeah, I tried it.
That was like us at Linux Fest when we were bringing out our laptops. I got this little teeny netbook. You got this monster.
Boom! Had to have its own table.
Fun. Yeah, I know. It makes a FUD when you set it down.
Yeah.
And I just kind of look and like, yep.
Well, there you go. So I got a couple of things I want to mention before we run.
Yes.
If you're not watching Linux Unplugged, you're screwing up. Straight up, you're making a big mistake.
You're missing out on big stuff.
Good show. We just talked about the new Dark Mail initiative, which is using the Silent Circle protocol, which is based on like XMPP, JSON, and XML, to set up a new encrypted email system that's going to replace SMTP. We recapped all of that in Linux Unplugged episode 13. And then episode 12, we talked about Systemd versus Upstart and Debian's future choices. So 2 great episodes for you to go check out. Matt, you had something you wanted to mention, something from our local neck of the woods.
Yeah, if you're Western Washington local, especially more specifically to Everett and the surrounding region, the Replay Cafe is basically a 1980s themed arcade. And I mean that in every sense of the word.
That's
The music is 80s music.
Really?
The machines, Q*bert, Space Invaders, Joust, Pong, going all the way up to like Street Fighter
and pinball.
Pinball. Oh, they got a wall-to-wall pinball. They got all this stuff. Well, they're trying to raise funds to basically expand on their already awesome offerings and include things like offering restaurant-like services and things like that. It's a family environment. It's a family atmosphere. Yeah. And I really would encourage you to go check out their Kickstarter page and maybe kick down a few bucks to see if we can make that happen.
They're trying to get to 12K. They're at 520 right now. Only 12 days left to go. So it's getting a little tight. And so one of the reasons we're bringing it up here on the big show is Replay Cafe is on our short list for on-location episodes in 2014.
Yes.
I'd love to see them get some love, and I'd love to see them get some love from the last audience, because I'm going to be honest with you, that gets us a foot in the front door.
It really does. Yeah. It really does. And honestly, there's a lot of gamers out there. You guys are going to want to check this out. What an awesome experience to bring your kids to games that you might have loved when you were younger.
Yeah. So Replay Cafe's Kickstarter, they're just trying to raise 12K, and they're only at $520 right now.
Let's see if we can get them there.
That'd be really cool. And then we'll call them and say, hey, you know that Kickstarter you got a big kick up on? Well, that was from our show, and we'd love to do an episode on location.
Exactly.
And with pinball machines in the background.
I think. Oh my God, it's like it's awesome on so many levels. It's literally like time traveling when you walk through the door. It's so cool.
Well, so listen, the Linux Action Show is live on Sundays. We usually start at 10. We started about noon this week. We had
long story,
so many technical problems that we were working through, and so now it's 2 o'clock,
and we still have the chat room hanging in with us. So
yeah, they did good.
Amazing.
They were powerful. They were talk about they could run a marathon.
They really could.
So if you want to watch the show live, sometimes when you tune in live, you get so much more than you were expecting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much.
And if it came out a little late for you in your area, my apologies. We just kind of got a late start, but
Yeah.
I think we're able to get everything done we wanted to get done. So I'm just glad we managed to finish it. So that does bring us to the end of this week's episode. Join us live over jblive.tv, 10 a.m. Pacific. We also have jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar,
That's right.
where you can convert it to your own local times.
That's right. And usually it works.
Usually. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. Some people call me the gangster of Linux. Womp womp. I used to build my own kernels. You know, back in my Gen 2 days, my kernel, and I look back at this, I think it's so adorable. My kernel had 0 driver modules. I only built in what I had for only my hardware. I was all about it, man. I was all about it, Matt. Let me tell you. Yeah. It's in my It's in my ear holes.
Well, I don't hear no.
Well, I have sensitive ear holes, man.
Oh, okay.
I also have.
Really into your ear hole.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really feel stuff in my hole, and then I'm like, I can identify it too. I'm good at that. I think I could be a doctor.
Oh, God.
You know those new Google Help Outs? I think I could do audio diagnosis. People could call me.
Video gynecology.
And they'd be like,
the robotic arms. Let me take a look here.
Let me see if there's a Hangout app.
Okay,
for this.
now for the guys, cough. You know, I mean, yeah.
No, I only do ladies. Only do ladies. Wow.
Can you imagine that? Though? Like, oh my God.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow.
It'd be like, and then they could do like a Phoenix University.
So how would you
class.
How would you do a help out gynecology? Would you?
Well, you need robot arms. I mean, you just do, right? Yeah, right. Okay, now let's take a peek. Hello
Yeah. Yeah. All right. This here, guys, is this is the Linux Action Show, and it is season 29, episode 6, and it begins. It begins in 3, 2.
Oh yeah.
Crack open a Slim Jim.